So instead of calling themselves nationalists, they call themselves federalists, which is a kind of robbery of the name because, in fact, people who supported the Articles of Confederation were really federalists. These men were centralists or nationalists, but they think this name is a great deal less threatening. And unfortunately, they managed to label their opponents anti-federalists. And it's never good to be known as the anti-party. So even in the naming, they're very clever. The Federalists also have been through the convention, and they know all the arguments, all the debates, all the reasons why they did one thing and not another thing. The Anti-Federalists, on the whole, are men who chose not to participate because they were state sovereignty people. And so they come to these ratifying conventions less well armed about the arguments that need to be made than the Federalists. The Federalists, for instance, get John Jay, Madison, and Hamilton to write the Federalist Papers, which are, in modern parlance, sort of talking points for people who are in favor of the Constitution. So if someone raises an objection, all you have to do is turn to Federalist number 58, and you have an answer. So they are really well armed for these debates. And the Anti-Federalists, who have never met together, who are just men who don't want a strong national government, are at a disadvantage from the very beginning. One group has a plan, the other group has I'm not sure we want this. The Anti-Federalists were also at a great disadvantage because they agreed the Confederation wasn't working. And so they agreed that it should be strengthened. They just didn't want it as strong as the Constitution made it. But they couldn't argue, we don't need this, we don't need this. Patrick Henry actually does get up in the Virginia Ratifying Convention and he says, we don't need any changes. Everything's fine the way it is. But most Anti-Federalists said, well, it's true, we need to make some changes. And that weakened their argument. The strongest argument they had was, A, that the group had met in secret, and that suggested a plot, a conspiracy, and Americans after the Revolution were really obsessed with the idea of a tyrannical conspiracy. But their strongest argument was that there was no Bill of Rights, and that this proved that this group that met in secret meant to tyrannize the American population. Actually, the reason they had not written a Bill of Rights was they wanted to go home. They'd been there 4 months. They were living in taverns. They were away from their families. And at the very last minute, someone said, shouldn't we have a Declaration of Rights? And everybody groaned, said, we'll be here for another 2 months. And then some genius said, we don't need one because all the state constitutions have them. And if the state constitutions have them, then we're fine. They were right, but they were strategically wrong. That is, this was the strongest argument against them, and it was very powerful. The Massachusetts Convention comes up with a solution. They say we ratify the Constitution conditional upon the addition of a Bill of Rights. And after that, almost all the states say the same thing. We ratify, but you have to add a Bill of Rights, and that's why we have the first 10 amendments.